I need the money by tomorrow morning, Daddy. My daughter Vanessa slid a stack of papers across my mahogany desk. $800,000. Non-negotiable. Blake, my son-in-law, leaned against the doorframe of my study, arms crossed, wearing that smirk I had learned to hate over 5 years of marriage to my daughter. A white man from old Buckhead money, now broke, looking at me like I was just another obstacle between him and wealth. I set down my bourbon, slowly buying time to steady my hands. 76 years old. 46 years building Jackson Automotive from nothing in a city that didn't want black men owning car dealerships. One daughter, one catastrophic mistake of a son-in-law, one night that would change absolutely everything between us. $800,000, I repeated, letting each word hang in the air. His investors, Vanessa said, touching the diamond necklace around her throat. The one I had bought her 3 Christmases ago to replace my mother's original after she had pawned it in 1974 for my first car lot down payment. They are not patient people, Daddy. You always said family comes first, right? I had said a lot of things over the years. Built my first dealership in 1975 when banks wouldn't even look at loan applications from black men. Slept in that lot for 6 months with nothing but a German shepherd named Duke and my mother's prayers. Sent my daughter to Spelman College so she would never have to struggle the way I did. Walked her down the aisle at the Four Seasons to this white boy whose family looked at me during the ceremony like I was the help at their country club wedding. What happened to the Round Rock investment property? I kept my voice steady, though my jaw had started its familiar clench. The one I funded 8 months ago. Blake finally looked up from his phone. Market corrections, Lawrence. Temporary setback. That's not what we're here for tonight. Lawrence, not Mr. Jackson, not even sir. 5 years married to my daughter and he still could not manage basic respect. Just my first name casual, like we were college buddies splitting a bar tab. Vanessa's wedding ring spun around her finger. My mother's ring, actually. The same tell she had developed at age 12 when lying about who broke Patricia's china cabinet. Spinning, always spinning when the truth was somewhere else. The thing is, she started, then stopped, then started again. Blake has been working incredibly hard on this new venture. Tech startup, very promising, revolutionary really. We just need to bridge this gap until... How much I interrupted, cutting through the performance. The grandfather clock in the corner marked 3 seconds of perfect silence. My migraine started its familiar throb behind my left eye, the same one I got in 1975 when the fourth bank rejected my application. The same one from sleeping in that lot, wondering if I would ever make something of myself, wondering if my unborn daughter would be proud. $800,000, Vanessa said clearly. In our account by noon tomorrow. That's... I started, then stopped as memories flooded in without permission. Teaching Vanessa to ride her bicycle at Piedmont Park, her fearless laughter as I let go of the seat, her graduation from Spelman in that cap and gown, making me the proudest father in all of Atlanta. Walking her down the aisle at the Four Seasons while Blake's family whispered about the car salesman giving away the bride. Had that girl ever existed? Or had I imagined her all along? Daddy, we would not ask if we had any other option. Vanessa's fingers moved from her necklace to dab at her eyes, though I noticed no actual tears forming. The mortgage on the house, the kids' private school tuition. You know how expensive Pace Academy has become. I did know. I paid it directly every semester. $18,000 per child. Marcus and Aisha, my grandchildren, who barely knew me because visits were always complicated, always rescheduled, always somehow inconvenient for Blake's schedule. What about the 3 startups I funded? I asked quietly. The cryptocurrency venture, the consulting firm, the real estate app. Blake stood, abruptly walked to my bar without invitation, and poured himself 3 fingers of my 25-year-old Macallan. Ancient history, Lawrence. We are talking about our future here. Your grandchildren's future. The grandchildren whose college funds I had already established. The ones whose birthday parties I was rarely invited to anymore. The ones Blake's family saw twice a month while I was lucky to get twice a year. These are not bank people we are dealing with. Blake continued his cologne mixing with the oak notes of my scotch. They are serious individuals. Would hate for this situation to affect your reputation at the country club or the dealerships. Bad publicity travels fast in Atlanta's business community. The threat hung in the air, obvious and nauseating. My blood pressure spiked. The migraine exploded from behind my eye, spreading across my skull like wildfire. The room tilted slightly, and I gripped the edge of my desk. "Daddy, you look pale," Vanessa said. Not with concern, but with calculation, like she was measuring my weakness for maximum leverage. That's when she deployed her nuclear option. "If Mama were still alive, she would be ashamed of how you are treating us right now." The words detonated between us. Vanessa knew exactly what she was doing. Patricia and I had divorced 10 years ago, but Vanessa still weaponized her memory whenever convenient. Never mind that Patricia lived happily in Charleston with her new husband. Never mind that Patricia had warned me repeatedly about Vanessa's manipulation tactics. In Vanessa's manufactured version of history, Patricia was a saint who would have opened her checkbook without hesitation or question. "Your mother," I said very slowly, very carefully, "would have told you both to get jobs." Blake barked a laugh from my bar, still holding my scotch like he had earned the right to drink it. "Jobs. I'm an entrepreneur. Lawrence. I create jobs. I build things." 3 failed startups in 5 years. A cryptocurrency disaster I had explicitly warned him about last Christmas. A consulting firm that never consulted anyone. A real estate app that never left beta testing. I had funded every single one, watching $295,000 disappear into Blake's delusions of grandeur and Vanessa's unwillingness to tell him no. "Let me understand this clearly," I said, releasing my grip on the desk and standing straighter despite the migraine. "You need $800,000 deposited into your account by noon tomorrow." For what exactly? Vanessa and Blake exchanged a glance. The kind that married couples perfect over years of coordinated deception, of unified manipulation, of tag team attacks on family members with resources. "Real estate opportunity," Blake said, returning to my desk and shuffling through papers with practiced ease. "Time sensitive. Cannot miss this window of investment. You just told me you lost money on real estate in Round Rock barely 8 months ago." "That was different." Blake's knuckles whitened as he gripped one of the documents. This is cryptocurrency. I mean, this is commercial property. This is a sure thing." The slip was small but significant. Cryptocurrency, not real estate, not commercial property. The same catastrophic mistake that had cost them $200,000 just last year. The same addiction to get-rich-quick schemes that had defined Blake's entire relationship with my money. My left hand started its new tremor, the one that had developed in my 70s. I shoved it into my pocket, refusing to show weakness, refusing to give them ammunition. Vanessa's phone buzzed on my desk. She glanced at it quickly, typed a response with practiced speed, then placed it face down. But not before I glimpsed the contact name Casino Steve. "Daddy, we have supported you through so much," Vanessa said, switching tactics smoothly. "When you and Mama divorced, who stood by your side? When the economy crashed in 2020, who helped keep the dealerships running? You were in Cabo that entire summer," I reminded her. "Posted about it daily on Instagram. Your help consisted of liking my posts about surviving the pandemic. That is not fair." The wedding, I started listing, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest like pressure in a boiler. $120,000, the house down payment. $250,000, Blake's first startup. $150,000, the second. $80,000, the third. "That is ancient history," Blake interrupted, standing now, attempting to use his height advantage, stepping closer to my desk in what I recognized as an intimidation tactic. "We are talking about right now. About our future, your grandchildren's future. The grandchildren whose private school tuition I paid directly to Pace Academy every semester. The children I had set up irrevocable trust funds for, accessible only at age 25, protected from their parents' financial incompetence. These are not just debts," Lawrence Blake said, stepping even closer, close enough that I could see the small scar above his left eyebrow from some prep school lacrosse injury. "These are obligations. Serious people with serious consequences. Tomorrow at noon, or things get very complicated for everyone involved. Your reputation, the dealerships, that nice country club membership you value so much." "Are you threatening me?" I asked quietly. "In my own house." "We are being honest about reality," Vanessa said, but her voice wavered slightly. She had never seen me this angry, this controlled, this dangerously calm. "Daddy, please," she continued. "We need this money by tomorrow noon. That timeline is not negotiable. These people, they do not wait. They do not care about your business or your reputation. They only care about their money." The room felt suffocating despite the central air conditioning running at full capacity. My migraine pounded with each heartbeat. Blake's excessive cologne seemed to thicken the very air I was trying to breathe. Vanessa's carefully applied makeup had started to run from her calculated tears, creating something almost theatrical, almost rehearsed. I looked at them both carefully. My daughter, who had somehow become a complete stranger. Her husband, who had never pretended to be anything but a parasite with good breeding and better connections to terrible people. The grandfather clock chimed 9 times each tone, marking another second of their expectation, another moment of my supposed capitulation. Outside my study window, suburban Atlanta continued its quiet evening routines, completely oblivious to the family destruction happening in my home office, to the final thread of relationship being severed with surgical precision. "Fine," I said finally. The word came out flat, exhausted, drained of everything. "Tomorrow at noon. Now leave my house." Vanessa mistook my exhaustion for surrender, for the capitulation she had been certain would come. She rushed forward, arms outstretched for another embrace, another performance of filial affection. I stepped back deliberately, letting her arms fall empty into the space between us. Blake extended his hand for a handshake, gripping too hard, squeezing too long, establishing a dominance he had never earned and never would. "We knew you would understand," Vanessa said, gathering her designer handbag and her carefully staged folder of manipulation. "Family first, right, Daddy? Just like you always taught me." They walked out without another word. Blake's hand possessively on Vanessa's lower back, guiding her like a poker chip he had just won from a foolish old man who did not understand the new rules of the game. I stood in my study doorway, watching their white Tesla's distinctive lights fade down my street, past Mrs. Anderson's house, past the Johnson's corner lot, disappearing around the bend onto Habersham Road. I waited exactly 5 minutes after their taillights vanished before reaching for my phone. James Carter answered on the second ring despite the late hour. 25 years of friendship and legal counsel meant he knew my patterns, knew my rhythms, knew I never called after 9 o'clock unless something was profoundly, irrevocably wrong. They finally crossed the line, didn't they? His voice carried no surprise, only the deep resignation of a man who had been expecting this call for months, perhaps years. "Tomorrow at noon," they said. Like I am just an ATM with a withdrawal limit they have finally decided to exceed. "The house transfer paperwork is already filed," James said, and I could hear papers shuffling on his end of the line. "They just don't know it yet. Emily's name was never on that deed. Remember? You insisted on keeping it in your name only when you paid their down payment back in 2020. I had insisted. 5 years ago, when Blake first entered our lives with his prep school charm and his family's faded Buckhead pedigree, something in my gut had screamed warning, not because he was white. I had built my business in integrated Atlanta, had white business partners I trusted with my life. No, it was something else. Something in how he looked at Vanessa's last name, at my dealerships, at the equity I had built over 46 years of backbreaking work. "What about Patricia?" I asked, walking through my house with new eyes, seeing it differently now. Not as a home, but as a stage set for tonight's final performance of a play that had been running far too long. "She's expecting your call," James replied. "Says it's about damn time you stopped enabling them." Her words, not mine. I hung up with James and immediately went to my home office, the one room in this house that Vanessa and Blake never entered. The migraine had shifted from explosive pain to cold clarity, the kind of focus that comes when you finally stop pretending and start acting. My laptop opened to an email confirmation from 3 weeks ago. Villa Las Palmas, Costa Rica. March 17th through April 17th. Your reservation is confirmed. What had been planned as a retirement scouting trip would now serve a dramatically different purpose. I called American Airlines, next navigating their automated system with the efficiency of someone who had been booking business travel for decades. Yes, the morning flight could be moved to 6:45 a.m. Yes, first class was still available. Yes, one passenger only. My home safe opened with a combination I had never shared with anyone, not even Patricia during our marriage, certainly not with Vanessa. Inside, organized in labeled folders with the precision of a man who had built an empire on documentation and details, lay 20 years of financial records. Every check I had ever written to Vanessa or Blake, every wire transfer, every credit card payment I had made on their behalf, every loan that was called a loan but legally documented as a gift. Blake's signed promissory note from December 2023, where he had sworn on paper with a notary witness that this would be the last time he would ever request financial assistance from me. I pulled out the thick manila folder labeled Instagram Evidence. Patricia had helped me compile this over the past 6 months, screenshots of every post that contradicted their claims of financial struggle. Vanessa at a spa in Napa Valley while claiming they couldn't afford groceries. Blake at Topgolf with bottle service while asking me to cover their mortgage. Shopping sprees at Lenox Square. Dinners at Bones Restaurant. Weekend trips that cost more than most families spent in months. The second folder contained something more damning. 5 years of security camera footage from my home. I had installed the system after a break-in attempt in 2020, high-definition cameras with audio recording throughout my house. Georgia was a one-party consent state for recording. My house, my consent, perfectly legal. The footage captured everything. Tonight's performance, of course, but also years of previous visits. Vanessa coaching Blake in my driveway before they came inside to ask for money. Blake's contemptuous comments about the old man in my own kitchen not realizing the camera above the refrigerator caught every word. Vanessa's phone calls to friends from my guest bathroom calling me a walking ATM too pathetic to say no, too old to understand modern finance. Christmas 2023. Thanksgiving 2022. Easter 2024. Every holiday, a performance, every visit, a transaction, every hug, a negotiation. I found an old Amazon box in my garage, ordinary brown cardboard, meaningless and unremarkable. Inside this box, I would place the complete destruction of Vanessa's illusions arranged with the precision of a man who had spent 46 years building things that lasted. First document, the deed to their house. The beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in Druid Hills that Vanessa posted about constantly that Blake used as proof of his success that they believed they owned. Except they didn't. They never had. The paperwork Vanessa had signed in 2020, the stack of documents she had flipped through while talking on her phone had never transferred ownership, just power of attorney for maintenance issues. She had never read past page 2. I had counted on that. Her impatience, her assumption that Daddy would never trick her, her certainty that paperwork was boring and unnecessary. Second document, the spreadsheet. I had created it myself in Excel color-coded and comprehensive. Every dollar I had given them over 8 years meticulously documented with dates, amounts, purposes, and outcomes. Wedding, $120,000. Reception at the Four Seasons open bar for 200 guests, band flown in from New York, flowers that cost more than my first car. House down payment, $250,000. 20% down on a $1.2 million property they couldn't afford then and couldn't afford now. Cars, $78,000 for Vanessa's Mercedes. $65,000 for Blake's Range Rover, now repossessed, a fact they had somehow neglected to mention. Startup number 1, the cryptocurrency trading platform. $150,000 gone in 8 months. Startup number 2, the boutique consulting firm. $80,000 dissolved after 1 year of 0 clients. Startup number 3, the real estate app. $65,000 never left beta testing, now abandoned. Credit cards, monthly supplements, averaging $3,000 to $5,000 per month over 5 years. Another $180,000 minimum. Vacations I had funded, Cabo Napa, Charleston, Savannah, Miami, New York. Another $40,000. Private school tuition, I paid directly $36,000 per year for 2 children. I had paid 3 years so far. $108,000. The total at the bottom in bold red letters, $1,470,000 over 8 years, to 1 daughter and her husband. None of it loans, all of it gifts properly documented with gift tax returns filed annually, completely legal, entirely unreturnable. Third item, the USB drive. I had spent yesterday afternoon with my IT specialist, a young woman from Morehouse who had helped me compile and organize 5 years of security footage. The drive contained 52 video files, each one labeled with date and summary. Tonight's performance was File 52. File 1 was from 2020. Blake's first visit to my home, his comment to Vanessa in my driveway. Just cry if you have to. Old guy's a sucker for tears. Fourth document, the prenuptial agreement that Blake had signed before marrying Vanessa. His lawyer had been drunk at the signing, showing up at 2 p.m., smelling like bourbon, barely reviewing the 49 pages of legalese that James had crafted with surgical precision. Page 47, subsection 3, highlighted now in yellow marker, gambling addiction clause. If either party accumulates gambling debts exceeding $50,000 during the marriage, immediate forfeiture of all marital assets to the non-gambling spouse. Blake had passed that threshold 3 years ago. I had the casino records to prove it. Hartsfield-Jackson Airport had 3 casinos. Blake had Players Club cards at all of them. My private investigator had photographs, timestamps, betting records obtained through legal discovery processes. $800,000 in total gambling losses over 5 years. The current debt to serious people was just the most recent installment. 5th document, text message transcripts. I had paid for a legal data recovery on Vanessa's old iPhone, the one she had traded in last year, the one the Apple Store had sold to a refurbishing company, the one that refurbishing company had been legally required to turn over during discovery in an unrelated civil matter that James had cleverly engineered. The texts were damning. Vanessa to her college roommate, "Dad's too pathetic to say no. Just ask and cry a little." Vanessa to her sorority sister, "I deserve this money more than he does. He won't live forever anyway." Vanessa to Blake, "Just take whatever he offers. He's too weak to actually refuse us." 6th document. Blake signed promissory note from December 2023. Blake Morrison promised that this is the final time I will request financial assistance from Lawrence Jackson. Any future requests will be accompanied by full financial disclosure and repayment plan. Signed, dated, notarized by James's paralegal. It had been a test. Blake had failed. At the bottom of the box, I placed a simple envelope. Inside, a single key. The key to a storage unit at Airport Mini Storage Unit 217. Inside that unit sat every item from Vanessa's childhood that I had saved. Her debate trophies from high school, her art projects from elementary school, her report cards all straight A's, photographs of birthday parties where she had smiled without calculation, her acceptance letter to Spelman, her grandmother's jewelry, my mother's pieces that I had promised Vanessa when she turned 30, pieces she had never asked about, never remembered, never valued. Also in that storage unit, a $50,000 savings bond in Vanessa's name purchased in 2010, maturable in April 2026. The final test. The eyes. Would she cash it immediately, proving she had learned nothing? Or would she let it mature, proving she had finally understood the value of patience, of earning, of waiting? On top of everything, I placed a note handwritten on my personal stationery, the heavy cream cardstock with my initials embossed at the top. You wanted it by tomorrow. Here's what you're really getting. I sealed the box with packing tape, wrote Vanessa's full name across the top in black Sharpie, and carried it to my front porch. Tomorrow at 11:45 a.m., 15 minutes before their expected noon arrival, my lawn service would place this box prominently on the porch table, positioned perfectly for the security camera above my door to capture every moment of its opening. The packing took 30 minutes. 2 suitcases efficiently filled with tropical weight clothing, essential documents, medications for blood pressure and cholesterol. My passport. My mother's Bible, the one she had carried from rural Georgia to Atlanta in 1950. The photograph of young Vanessa, age 7, gap-toothed and genuine before Blake, before entitlement, before she had learned to see me as a resource rather than a father. My dealership manager, Jake, received a brief email. Family emergency of indefinite duration. You're in charge. Complete operational authority. Details to follow through. James Carter, attorney at law. Jake had been with me for 15 years. He had earned this. He would run Jackson Automotive better than I could now anyway. Younger, sharper, more adapted to electric vehicles and online sales and whatever the future held for the car business. At 11 p.m., I made one final call. Patricia answered on the first ring as if she had been sitting by the phone in her Charleston home waiting. "Robert," she said, using my middle name, the one only she ever used. "James called me an hour ago." "Are you really doing this?" "Should have done it years ago. She's our daughter. She stopped being our daughter the moment she started seeing us as obstacles to inheritance." "You know that, Patricia. You've known it longer than I have." A long pause. I could hear ice clinking in a glass. Patricia's evening bourbon, same brand I drank, habit from 30 years of marriage that divorce hadn't changed. "The Costa Rica property," she finally said. "You'll be safe there. It's beautiful this time of year. I looked at the photos you sent. It's not about safety. It's about distance, about letting her hit bottom without me there to cushion the fall. And if she doesn't learn," Patricia's voice cracked slightly, "if this just makes her hate you, then at least I'll know I tried everything else first. At least I'll know I didn't enable her into complete destruction." "James has my contact information," Patricia said. "If you need anything anything at all, you call me. We might be divorced, Robert, but I never stopped caring about you. And I never stopped caring about saving our daughter from herself. I know. That's why you've been helping document everything for 6 months. She deserves a chance to become who she was supposed to be. Before Blake. Before entitlement. Before she forgot that Jackson is a name you built, not a bank account she inherited. We said goodbye without sentimentality. Patricia understood what Vanessa had become, perhaps better than I did. Mothers always know. They just hope longer, hurt deeper, forgive more reluctantly. At 11:30 p.m., I stood in my dark kitchen drinking water from a crystal glass, studying the refrigerator covered in my grandchildren's artwork. Stick figures labeled Grandpa and me fishing at Lake Lanier. A crayon drawing of my dealership with Grandpa's cars, scrawled beneath in Marcus's careful 7-year-old handwriting. I carefully removed the fishing picture, folded it with precision, and placed it in my wallet. The children weren't responsible for their parents' choices. They shouldn't be punished for lessons their mother needed to learn. I set the box on the porch table where it would wait for tomorrow, positioned perfectly under the camera, ready to detonate at noon. The security system armed. The thermostat lowered. The lights on timers to suggest occupancy. Everything prepared with the thoroughness of a man who had built a business empire through attention to details that others overlooked. My alarm was set for 4:30 a.m. 6 hours until my new life began. 6.5 until theirs fell apart. 7 until Vanessa understood that love and enabling are not the same thing, that tough and cruel are not synonyms, that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the catastrophic failure they need to rebuild themselves. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom for the last time as a father who said yes. Tomorrow I would wake up as a father who finally said no, who finally chose self-respect over peace, who finally understood that saving Vanessa required letting her drown just long enough to learn to swim. The box waited on the porch, ordinary and devastating, patient and final. At noon tomorrow, Vanessa would open it. By 1 p.m., her world would burn. By evening, she would understand that I didn't abandon her. I freed her from the prison I had built with my checkbook, one gift at a time, one capitulation at a time, one failure to say no at a time. And in freeing her, I would finally free myself. The alarm cut through darkness at exactly 4:30 a.m. No snooze button, no hesitation, no second guessing. I had trained myself over 46 years of early dealership openings to wake instantly, fully alert, ready to move. Today that discipline served an entirely different purpose. The coffee maker gurgled to life, already programmed the night before. Colombian dark roast, the kind Vanessa always complained was too strong when she still visited for Sunday breakfast, back when visits meant family instead of transactions. I dressed in the darkness of my bedroom, muscle memory guiding my hands. Comfortable travel clothes, nothing flashy. A 76-year-old black man traveling alone attracted enough attention without adding expensive watches or designer labels to the equation. The ceramic mug warmed my hands as I stood at my kitchen window watching Atlanta's skyline begin its slow awakening. Office buildings lighting up floor by floor while most of the city still slept, still dreamed, still believed that today would be like yesterday. My house felt different in these final moments. 40 years of memories pressed against me from every corner. The kitchen table where I had helped Vanessa with calculus homework. The living room where she had opened Christmas presents with squeals of delight. The backyard pool where I had taught her to swim, her fearless 6-year-old self jumping into my arms over and over, trusting completely that I would catch her. When had she stopped trusting me, or had I stopped being worthy of trust by never requiring her to stand on her own? 4:45 a.m. I carried my 2 suitcases downstairs, each one efficiently packed with everything I needed for my new life. Tropical weight shirts, linen pants, sandals, sunscreen, the basics of starting over at 76 years old in a country where nobody knew my name, my business, or my failures as a father. The Cadillac purred to life in my garage, reliable as always. I had chosen it over the Mercedes specifically because Blake had too many memories of riding in that car, too many assumptions about eventually inheriting it. Let him assume, let him plan, let him be wrong about everything. I backed out of my driveway, slowly taking one last look at the house I had bought in 1985 when Vanessa was just a baby, when Atlanta was still finding its voice as a black economic powerhouse, when I was still young enough to believe that money could solve any problem and prevent any pain. The streets of Buckhead lay empty except for garbage trucks beginning their Saturday routes. I drove past the 3 Jackson automotive locations that had made everything possible. The South location, my first one from 1975, still standing like a monument to impossible dreams that somehow came true. The Midtown location where Vanessa had worked one summer during college, learning nothing about cars but everything about expecting respect she hadn't earned. The North location, my flagship with my name in letters 3 feet tall visible from the highway. Some man I didn't know yet would run these dealerships soon. Jake was capable, hungry, ready. He would do better than I could now anyway. Time to let go. I passed Spelman College where I had sent my daughter to learn about legacy, about excellence, about the sacrifices of those who came before. She had learned the history. She had missed the lesson. Past Sweet Auburn where my mother had worked as a maid in 1950, making $30 a week, cleaning white people's houses, saving every penny so I could have a chance she never had. The neighborhood was gentrified now, unrecognizable, expensive. Even the past gets priced out eventually. The city that had once called me boy, that had refused my loan applications, that had made me prove my worth 1,000 times over now, had my name on billboards and buildings. I had won. But winning felt hollow when your only child saw your victory as her trust fund. Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport emerged from the morning mist at 5:30 a.m. Already busy with travelers escaping to somewhere else, running towards something or away from something, all of us in motion, all of us seeking. I parked in long-term parking section C, space 47. Let them wonder about my car eventually. Let them file a missing person report if they cared enough. By then, I would be long gone. The terminal felt surreal at this hour. TSA agents still waking up, coffee shops just opening, families with sleeping children sprawled across gate seating, everyone absorbed in their own dramas, oblivious to mine. Michelle stood at the first-class check-in counter, the same agent who had processed my business travel for a decade. She looked surprised to see me with personal luggage instead of my usual briefcase. Costa Rica. Today, Mr. Jackson. Her voice carried professional cheer despite the early hour. Change of plans, I replied, handing over my passport, long overdue. She processed my boarding pass with efficient keystrokes, her eyes flickering to her screen with something like concern. Everything all right, sir? Better than it's been in years. 2 bags to check. Everything else I needed was in my carry-on. Documents, medications, my mother's Bible, the photograph of young Vanessa. You can leave everything else behind if you choose carefully enough. As Michelle tagged my luggage, I pulled out a sealed envelope from my jacket pocket. I need a favor. Someone will come looking for this later today. Vanessa Carter. She'll be agitated, upset, probably demanding. Just verify her identification and give her this. Nothing more. Michelle took the envelope without questions. Airport agents see everything, judge nothing, forget quickly. It's why I chose her. Inside that envelope, a key, a storage unit number, a brief note, for when you're ready to remember who you were before money mattered. Nothing else. No apology, no explanation, no comfort. She didn't need comfort. She needed consequences. TSA pre-check moved with Saturday morning efficiency. Shoes off, laptop out, the ritual dance of modern travel. The agents recognized me from monthly business trips. Where to today, Mr. Jackson? Somewhere warmer, somewhere new. Through the scanner belt, back on shoes reclaimed. The mundane process felt surreal against the magnitude of what I was doing. Abandoning my daughter, fleeing my own life, starting over at 76. Except I wasn't abandoning her. I was releasing her. There's a difference. Gate 14. The boarding area was nearly empty at 6 a.m. I bought the largest coffee they offered, black, no room for cream. Special occasion, the barista asked, trying to make conversation. You could say that. I sat at the gate watching the plane being prepared outside the window. My phone showed 7 missed calls from Vanessa already. She was waking up early, probably anxious about collecting her money, probably already planning how to spend it. 3 voicemails from Blake. 12 text messages, unread. I powered off the phone, completely removed the SIM card with careful precision, and dropped both into the nearest trash receptacle. Let them try to track me. Let them try to guilt me. Let them try to manipulate someone who was no longer listening. Boarding began at 6:25. First-class passengers, those needing assistance, families with small children. I waited patient, knowing my seat was guaranteed, knowing my escape was inevitable. Then I heard my name. Lawrence Jackson. I turned, expecting airport security, expecting some last-minute disaster, expecting the universe to prevent my escape. Patricia stood at the gate entrance, designer luggage in hand, boarding pass displayed on her phone, looking exactly as composed as she had during our divorce proceedings 10 years ago. She walked to me calmly, settling into the seat beside mine without asking permission. "James called," she said simply. "Thought you might need backup for what comes next." "It's not your fight anymore," I managed to say, stunned. "Hasn't been for 10 years. She's still my daughter," Patricia replied. "Still my failure, too. Someone should be there when she finally lands hard enough to wake up." Lands were Costa Rica. "I bought the condo next door to your villa 6 months ago. James handled everything, negotiated the price, managed the paperwork, kept it quiet. 6 months. Patricia had been planning this parallel escape for half a year, watching from Charleston, coordinating with James, preparing for the same conclusion I had reached. Our daughter needed to fail, and neither of us could watch it happen from close range. "Did you tell her," I asked, "that you were helping document everything?" "No. She'll figure it out today when she opens that box and realizes this wasn't impulse. This was strategy. This was both her parents finally agreeing on something after 10 years of divorce." The gate agent announced final boarding. We stood together, two people who had once loved each other enough to create a child who had fallen apart under the weight of different dreams, who now found themselves united in the painful necessity of letting that child fall. We boarded side by side. Patricia settled into 2B right across the aisle from my 2A. Close enough to talk, far enough to maintain the boundaries we had established a decade ago. The door closed with pneumatic finality at 6:40. The captain's voice welcomed us aboard. Flight attendants demonstrated safety procedures. Nobody watched. The plane pushed back from the gate with that subtle lurch that means no turning back. We taxied toward the runway as the sun broke over Atlanta's eastern horizon, painting the city gold and crimson, beautiful and indifferent to the lives being reshaped within its boundaries. At exactly 7 a.m., the engines roared. Acceleration pressed me back into leather that smelled nothing like Blake's cologne or Vanessa's perfume, just clean, neutral forward. Wheels left pavement. Atlanta dropped away beneath us. Hills and lakes and highways becoming abstract geometry, becoming memory, becoming past tense. Somewhere down there, Vanessa's alarm was going off. In 4 hours, she would arrive at my empty house. In 5 hours, she would find the box. In 6 hours, my old life would be completely dismantled, brick by brick, lie by lie, illusion by illusion. The flight attendant appeared with the beverage cart. "Business or pleasure?" she asked with practiced cheer. Neither I replied, accepting a glass of champagne at 7:15 in the morning. "Justice." Patricia laughed beside me, the first genuine laugh I had heard from her in years. "That's the Lawrence I married. Welcome back." Below us, Georgia disappeared under clouds. Ahead, the Gulf of Mexico stretched blue and endless and utterly indifferent to human drama. At exactly noon, when Vanessa expected $800,000, I would be having lunch somewhere over the Caribbean. Patricia, reading a magazine beside me. Both of us finally free from the daughter we had loved into uselessness and now loved enough to let destroy herself just long enough to rebuild. The hardest thing I ever did wasn't building a business in racist Atlanta. It was leaving my daughter to face consequences without my checkbook to soften the landing. But love isn't just catching someone when they fall. Sometimes love is stepping aside so they finally learn to catch themselves. I learned what happened next, the way I learned most things about Vanessa's life in recent years, secondhand through cameras and witnesses, like watching a documentary about someone I used to know. James sent me the security footage 3 days later, encrypted and uploaded to a private server. I watched it on my laptop from the Costa Rica balcony, Pacific waves providing an oddly peaceful soundtrack to my daughter's complete meltdown. The timestamp showed 11:30 a.m., exactly when Vanessa's internal clock told her to arrive fashionably late, but not so late as to seem disrespectful. She had always been precise about these performances. Her white Mercedes pulled into my driveway with the confidence of someone about to collect an allowance, someone certain of their welcome, someone who had never once been told no in a way that mattered. Blake sat in the passenger seat scrolling through his phone. James would later confirm he was checking basketball scores, probably already planning his next bet with money he didn't have yet but assumed was coming. The arrogance was almost impressive. Vanessa checked her lipstick in the rearview mirror, the same shade of red she had worn at 16 when she wanted something, at 25 when she got engaged, At 35, when she demanded $800,000, red for war paint for armor for the costume of a daughter who knew exactly which buttons to push. Blake carried his Hermes briefcase as he walked to my door, the $12,000 leather bag he had bought with my money from the January loan. Empty now, waiting to be filled with cash or checks or wire transfer confirmations. Waiting to carry away the last pieces of my dignity. They approached my front door like they owned it. In Vanessa's mind, perhaps they did. In Blake's mind, they certainly would soon enough. Vanessa rang the doorbell. Normal ring, not the demanding triple press from last night. She was playing nice now, playing grateful, playing the role of beloved daughter, collecting a gift rather than entitled heir extracting a payment. She waited exactly 10 seconds. I knew because the security camera timestamp counted it down. 10 seconds of patience, of performance, of pretending she hadn't threatened me 12 hours earlier. Then she rang again, longer this time, more insistent, the performance cracking slightly. Blake cupped his hands against the side window, peering into my empty kitchen like a burglar casing a house. "His car's gone," he said loudly enough for the camera to catch. "So what?" Vanessa replied, still trying to sound unconcerned. "He's got 5 cars, the lights are on timers." Blake's voice carried a note of suspicion now, of dawning awareness that something wasn't following his script. Vanessa pulled out her keys, the set I had given her years ago for emergencies, back when emergencies meant she forgot her textbook, not that she needed to break into my empty house. Her keys scraped against the lock, unable to find purchase. James's paralegal had changed all the locks at 7 a.m. 3 hours after my flight departed, while Vanessa and Blake were probably still sleeping off last night's celebration of money they thought they had already won. "Why won't it open?" Vanessa's voice pitched higher, confusion replacing confidence. Blake tried next, shoving the key harder, as if force could overcome the simple fact that the locks no longer matched the keys. Same result. Confusion, then frustration, then the first edge of fear. That's when Blake spotted the box at 12:03 p.m., exactly when James had instructed my lawn service to place it prominently on the porch table, positioned perfectly for the camera above my door. "What's that?" Blake pointed. "Just an Amazon box." Vanessa walked over, still not understanding, still expecting gifts or apologies or some last-minute capitulation. "It's got your name on it." Blake's voice carried something new now. Not greed. Something more primal. Survival instinct, perhaps. The animal part of his brain recognizing danger before his conscious mind caught up. Vanessa opened the box casually, probably expecting a late birthday present, maybe an apology gift, certainly not the complete detonation of her entire existence. The first document she pulled out was the house deed. Her face changed like time-lapse photography of flowers dying from curiosity to confusion to disbelief to horror, all in under 3 seconds. She dropped it like it had burned her fingers. Blake snatched the paper before it hit the porch floor. "What do you mean it's in his name?" Blake's voice was loud now, all pretense of charm evaporating. "What do you mean you never owned it?" Vanessa stood frozen, staring at the box like it was a venomous snake that had just bitten her. Then she reached in again with trembling hands. The spreadsheet came out next. I had printed it on legal-size paper so she could see everything at once. Every payment, every gift, every dollar. 8 years of financial history in color-coded rows and columns that added up to $1,470,000 at the bottom in bold red font. Her hands shook as she read. Her lips moved, counting, calculating, realizing. This wasn't just about the house. This was about everything. Every assumption she had made about her life, her security, her future. The photographs came next. Blake at the Palms Casino in the airport, timestamps, clear his losses written in the slump of his shoulders. Blake at another casino 3 weeks later. Blake signing markers he couldn't cover. Blake with men in expensive suits who didn't look like they accepted excuses. Then the text messages printed and highlighted. Vanessa's own words. "Dad's too pathetic to say no. I deserve this money more than he does. Just take whatever he offers." Her mascara started running. Real tears now, not the calculated performance from last night. These were the tears of someone watching their carefully constructed lies exposed in high definition. Blake grabbed the USB drive from the box, his hands shaking. "What's on this?" Vanessa didn't answer. She had found the prenuptial agreement, flipped to page 47, saw the gambling clause highlighted in yellow marker, circled in red ink, impossible to miss. "You signed this." she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the ambient sound of suburban Saturday morning. Blake's face went white. It was buried on page 47. My lawyer said it was standard language. Your lawyer was drunk. And it says if you have gambling debts over $50,000, I get everything in the divorce. Everything. Vanessa's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with shaking hands. The first credit card decline, Chase Sapphire Reserve, transaction denied. Please contact your financial institution. Then another buzz. American Express Platinum, card suspended due to account review. Then another. Nordstrom. Invalid card number. Then another. Then another. Then another. Every card I had ever added her to as an authorized user, every line of credit I had guaranteed, every financial safety net I had provided. All canceled at midnight while she slept, all falling away in real time, while she stood on my porch holding the evidence of her own greed. Blake tried calling someone at 12:17. His bookie James would later discover. The conversation was short. The bookie's position was clear. No more credit extensions, no more promises, cash only. And by the way, the $800,000 you owe other people, they know where you live. Vanessa collapsed onto my porch steps, her designer dress crumpling against concrete I had resurfaced last summer. She reached back into the box with the desperate hope of someone who had lost everything checking pockets for spare change. She found the promissory note Blake had signed his signature, bold and undeniable. This is the last time. December 2023. 4 months ago. A lie, even then. You promised, Vanessa said to Blake, holding up the paper like evidence at a trial. You swore this was the last time. Blake wasn't listening. He had pulled out his phone and was frantically typing, calling, texting, trying to reach anyone who might save him from the consequences rushing toward him like a freight train. Vanessa found the USB drive that Blake had dropped. She plugged it into her phone with trembling fingers. The first video file started playing automatically. Audio through her phone speaker, tinny but clear enough. Her own voice from last night. I need the money by tomorrow morning, Daddy. $800,000. Non-negotiable. Then further back. Christmas 2023. Vanessa to Blake in my driveway, caught on camera, not knowing I could hear every word. Just cry if you need to. He's too weak to say no. He never says no. Further back. Thanksgiving 2022. Blake on his phone in my guest bathroom. The old man's loaded. Just play nice for a few hours and we walk out with whatever we need. Further back. Easter 2024. Vanessa to her friend on a phone call from my kitchen. I don't know why he even bothers showing up to these things. All he's good for is writing checks. 5 years of recordings. 5 years of evidence. 5 years of proof that I wasn't imagining it, wasn't being paranoid, wasn't misunderstanding their affection for calculation. At 12:24 p.m., Blake threw his Hermes briefcase at my front door. The handle broke off. $12,000 of Italian leather scattered across my porch like his dignity. This is insane, Blake shouted at no one, at everyone at the cameras recording his collapse. He can't do this. This is elder abuse. This is financial manipulation. Mrs. Dorothy Anderson emerged from her house next door at 12:26, all 4 feet 11 inches of 70-year-old moral authority. She wore her church clothes, just back from Saturday Bible study, and she held her phone like a weapon. I'm calling the police if you don't leave Mr. Jackson's property right now, Mrs. Anderson announced, her voice carrying across 3 lawns. This is my father's house, Vanessa screamed, mascara creating abstract art down her cheeks. I have a right to be here. Not anymore, you don't. Mr. Jackson sent the entire block an email this morning. You're trespassing. Property transfer went through yesterday at 4 p.m. This house is his, not yours, and he wants you gone. Vanessa looked at Mrs. Anderson with pure hatred. You don't understand. My father is sick. He's being manipulated. He needs help. Mrs. Anderson laughed, sharp and bitter. Sick, I saw Mr. Jackson 3 days ago. Sharp as ever. Helped me carry groceries. Told me all about his trip to Costa Rica. Said he was finally doing something for himself instead of funding your lifestyle. You knew. Vanessa's voice broke. The whole neighborhood knew, honey. Mrs. Anderson said, not unkindly, but not gently either. We've all known for years, watching that man work himself to exhaustion while you and your husband treated him like an ATM. It was shameful. But he loved you, so he kept giving. Some of us are glad he finally stopped. Blake grabbed Vanessa's arm, trying to pull her toward the car. We need to go. Now. Those people I owe money to, they know this address. If they show up and we're still here... Vanessa shook him off. I'm not leaving. This is my father's house. My house. Our house. It was never your house. Blake's voice had gone cold now, all pretense abandoned. Read the deed. You signed away power of attorney, not ownership. Your father played you, and now we're fucked. He stormed to the Mercedes at 12:28, Vanessa stumbling behind him, still clutching papers from the box, still trying to understand how her entire reality had disintegrated in 25 minutes. Blake peeled out of my driveway, leaving tire marks on concrete, leaving Vanessa to scramble into the passenger seat, leaving scattered papers blowing across my porch in the wind from his dramatic exit. Mrs. Anderson stood in my yard, phone in hand, making sure they actually left. When their taillights disappeared around the corner, she walked slowly to my porch and gathered the scattered documents, carefully placing them back in the box. She carried the box to her own house for safekeeping, just in case Vanessa came back. Just in case she tried to destroy the evidence. Just in case she needed one more reminder that her father had been thorough, had been careful, had been protecting himself from her for longer than she realized. At exactly 12:30 p.m., when Vanessa had expected to be depositing $800,000, she was instead sitting in her car at a gas station 3 miles away, Blake on his phone trying to reach anyone who might loan them money, trying to find any way out of the hole they had dug. And I was 35,000 feet above the Caribbean, having lunch with Patricia, both of us watching the ocean through the airplane window, both of us checking our phones for the message from James that would confirm what we already knew. The message arrived at 12:45 p.m. Package delivered and opened. Subject reacted as expected. Camera footage saved. No property damage. Mrs. Anderson has the evidence secured. Patricia showed me her phone. I nodded. We didn't toast or celebrate. This wasn't victory. This was surgery. Necessary, painful, hopefully curative. The flight attendant asked if we wanted more wine. We both declined. This required clear heads and steady hearts. Below us, the Caribbean stretched endless in blue. Ahead, Costa Rica waited with its promise of new beginnings at 76 years old, of lives rebuilt on foundations of self-respect instead of enabling. Behind us, Atlanta held my daughter, who was learning for the first time in 35 years what it meant to face consequences without my checkbook to soften the impact. Everything she thought she owned, gone in one box. Everything she thought she knew about her father, revealed in 25 minutes. Everything she assumed about her future, erased by documents she never bothered to read carefully. I didn't feel victorious. I felt heartbroken. But I also felt, for the first time in 8 years, free. The complete unraveling took 7 days. James sent me daily reports from his paralegal, who monitored everything: social media, court filings, credit reports, police reports. Patricia and I read them each morning over coffee on my Costa Rica balcony, watching our daughter's life collapse in real time like a building demolition captured by security cameras. Day 1, Saturday afternoon. Vanessa and Blake drove straight from my house to the law offices of Henderson & Associates, one of Atlanta's most prestigious family law firms. The senior partner, Thomas Henderson, agreed to see them immediately. Emergency consultations on Saturdays cost triple the normal rate. Vanessa didn't care. She still had her personal credit card, the one in her own name, the one I hadn't been paying for. It still had a $3,000 limit. She maxed it out for a 2-hour consultation. James obtained the consultation notes through legal discovery channels I didn't ask about and didn't need to understand. Henderson's assessment was brutal and brief. These documents are ironclad. Your father transferred the property legally. All gifts were properly documented. You signed the power of attorney papers yourself. The video evidence is admissible. The prenuptial agreement is enforceable. You have no case. My retainer is $10,000. Do you have access to those funds? Vanessa did not have access to those funds. Day 1 evening. Vanessa tried 3 more law firms: Chambers & Klein, Rodriguez Legal Group, the Buckhead Law Center. Each consultation followed the same pattern: initial sympathy, careful document review, dawning realization, apologetic refusal. The 4th lawyer, Margaret Simmons, from a storefront practice in East Atlanta, was most direct. Honey, your daddy did this by the book. He's protected. You're not. My advice: apologize, get a job, and hope he forgives you before he dies. That'll be $300 for the consultation. Vanessa paid with the last available credit on her personal card. Day 2, Sunday morning. Vanessa's Instagram story went live at 6:30 a.m. James's paralegal screenshot everything before Vanessa deleted it 17 minutes later, but by then 63 people had watched it, and screenshots spread through Atlanta's social networks like wildfire through dry grass. The video showed Vanessa in her bathroom, no makeup, eyes swollen from crying, wine glass shaking in her hand. "When someone you trust betrays you," she said to her phone camera, her voice raw and broken when your whole life is built on lies. She held up the house deed, the camera struggling to focus. "My father took everything. He planned this. He wanted me to suffer." Blake was visible in the background, throwing clothes into a suitcase, his voice cutting through Vanessa's monologue. "We need to leave. Those people I owe money to, they're not going to wait." Vanessa threw her wine glass across the bathroom. It shattered against their wedding photo glass, and red wine and frame crashing to the tile floor. The video cut off. 63 people watched. 47 were Vanessa's sorority sisters, college friends, book club members. 16 were strangers who found it through hashtags. The comment section before she deleted everything was savage. "Didn't you just post from Napa last week?" Someone wrote. "Your dad paid for that too." Another comment. "Girl, you're 35 years old. Get a job like the rest of us." A former Spelman classmate. "Your father built everything from nothing. You built nothing from everything. That's on you." 3 women from Vanessa's church. "We're praying for you, but also praying you learn this lesson." James sent me the screenshots. I read them once, felt nothing, deleted them. The court of public opinion was rendering its verdict. I didn't need to watch. Day 3. Monday. Blake's mother called my office. My assistant, who didn't know I had left the country, transferred the call to James per the instructions I had left. James recorded it, sent me the audio file. "Mr. Jackson." Blake's mother sounded frantic, desperate, a parent watching her child's life implode. "Blake has been missing since Saturday night. Vanessa says you did something to him." "I know that's crazy, but do you know where my son is? Please, he's my only child," James responded with lawyerly precision. "Mrs. Morrison, Mr. Jackson is traveling internationally for personal reasons. He has no knowledge of your son's whereabouts. I suggest contacting the police if you're concerned for his safety." Blake's mother did file a police report. Atlanta PD investigated for approximately 4 hours before determining that Blake was a 38-year-old man who had left voluntarily, had taken his passport and luggage, had withdrawn the maximum daily limit from 3 ATMs, and had not been kidnapped, coerced, or harmed. Case closed. Blake's phone last pinged a cell tower near the Mexican border at Laredo, Texas. He never crossed officially, which meant he either paid someone to smuggle him across or found a remote crossing point. Either way, he was gone. James's investigator would later confirm Blake had resurfaced in Juarez, working at a car rental agency under an assumed name, hiding from the $800,000 in gambling debts that followed him like hungry wolves. Day 3 afternoon. 2 men visited Vanessa's house. They didn't knock like door-to-door salesmen. They rang the bell once and waited with the patience of people who knew they'd get what they came for eventually. Professional courtesy from professional collectors. Vanessa answered through the video doorbell, her voice thin with fear. "I don't have the money. I'm trying to get it. I just need more time." The taller man spoke calmly, almost kindly. "Mrs. Morrison, we understand these situations can be complicated. We're leaving our card. It has a phone number. You have 14 days to make arrangements." After 14 days, we discuss alternative payment methods. They left a simple white business card with nothing but a phone number. No name, no company, no address, just 10 digits and a timeline. Vanessa called that number 6 times over the next 3 days. No one ever answered. The silence was more terrifying than any threat. Day 4, Tuesday. The eviction notice appeared on Vanessa's door. 3 months behind on mortgage payments. $15,200 owed plus late fees and legal costs. Total due $17,100. Payment required by May 15th. Or vacate the premises. Vanessa screamed when she found it, her voice echoing through the suburban neighborhood at 7 a.m. Mrs. Anderson watched from across the street, shaking her head sadly, probably praying for patience and wisdom and all the things good church women pray for when watching fools face consequences. Blake had been handling the finances. Blake had assured her everything was paid. Blake had been lying for months, using the mortgage money for gambling, for covering old debts, for buying himself 2 more weeks or 2 more months before everything collapsed. Vanessa had never looked at a bank statement in 5 years of marriage. Why would she? Daddy covered everything important. Blake handled the details. She just had to look pretty and spend appropriately and maintain the appearance of success. The appearance was over. Day 4 afternoon. Vanessa's desperate research began. Her Google search history visible because she'd used my Amazon account for the Wi-Fi password years ago and never changed it, read like a roadmap of denial turning into panic, turning into desperate last-ditch bargaining. Can father take back Gift House, Georgia? How to break power of attorney. Statute of limitations, financial gifts. Georgia emergency bankruptcy lawyer, Atlanta. Can casino debts affect spouse credit? Elder financial abuse definition. Cheap divorce attorney, no money down. Atlanta. Each search a door slammed in her face. Each result confirming what 4 lawyers had already told her. No recourse. No loophole. No escape clause in the documents I had spent 5 years perfecting. Day 5 Wednesday. The pawn shop tour began. Vanessa loaded her Mercedes with everything valuable she owned. Designer handbags, jewelry, Blake's abandoned watches, shoes that cost more than most people's monthly rent. The material accumulation of 8 years of my funding now reduced to desperate collateral. First stop, Buckhead Pawn and Jewelry. The owner, a kind man named Samuel, who'd been in business 40 years, laid everything out on his counter with the gentle hands of someone who'd seen this story 1,000 times. Rich people gone broke. Desperate people selling their dignity one Gucci bag at a time. Designer handbags he assessed, checking authenticity with practiced expertise. Retail value, maybe $30,000. I can give you $9,000 cash today. $9,000? Vanessa's voice went shrill. These cost $30,000. Resale value isn't retail value, ma'am. And I gotta make a profit when I sell them. $9,000 is fair. Take it or try somewhere else. Vanessa tried somewhere else. Then somewhere else. Then somewhere else. Every offer was similar. $9,000 to $10,000 for the bags. The jewelry went next. $50,000 in diamonds and gold, mostly gifts from me over birthdays and Christmases and graduations. $17,000 cash at the most generous offer. Blake's 3 watches, the ones he'd bought with my money, the ones he'd worn to prove his success. $40,000 retail value. $14,000 cash, and that was generous because they were high-end brands in good condition. Total haul, after visiting 7 pawn shops over 2 days, $40,200. Not enough to cover the eviction. Not enough to pay the threatening men. Not enough to save anything. Vanessa sat in her Mercedes in the parking lot of the last pawn shop, counting cash with shaking hands, crying quietly. Finally understanding what value really meant. What real wealth looked like. What happened when the foundation of lies finally crumbled. Day 6. Thursday. The Instagram fallout reached its peak. Vanessa hadn't posted since her Sunday morning meltdown, but her silence created a vacuum that others filled enthusiastically. Her Spelman sorority group chat, leaked by someone who'd had enough of Vanessa's drama, showed 5 years of conversations. Vanessa bragging about never working. Vanessa mocking other alumni who had jobs and budgets and responsibilities. Vanessa posting photos from expensive trips while claiming she was building a business, building a brand, building anything except the truth, which was that she was building nothing except debt on her father's foundation. The church ladies gossiped as church ladies do. Shame what happened to Lawrence Jackson's daughter. Married that white boy and forgot where she came from. Forgot who raised her. Forgot what it means to be grateful. Lord have mercy on her soul, she's gonna need it. The country club set whispered differently. Well, you know how those situations go. New money, trying to act like old money. The father worked so hard, built all those dealerships. Daughter just spent and spent. The husband gambled it all away. Tragic, really. Should we send a casserole? They did not send a casserole. Day 6 evening, Vanessa's workplace called. She'd been working part-time as a marketing consultant for a boutique firm in Midtown, a job I had secured for her through my connections, a job that paid $40,000 a year for approximately 15 hours of actual work per week. The owner, Caroline, was direct. Vanessa, I've seen the posts circulating. I've heard about the situation with your father. I want to be supportive, but several clients have expressed concerns. The optics aren't good. I think it's best if we part ways. I'll pay you through the end of the month. 2 weeks severance. Another bridge burned. Day 7 Friday. Adult Protective Services showed up at my house. An anonymous complaint alleged that a 76-year-old man might be suffering from dementia, might be living unsafely, might be vulnerable to self-neglect or exploitation. Mrs. Anderson, still maintaining watch over my property, met them at the door with my attorney's business card and a prepared statement. Mr. Jackson is traveling internationally by choice. He had a complete cognitive assessment 1 week ago. Results showed no impairment. He's competent, capable, and has legal representation. Here's the attorney's contact information. Have a blessed day. The social worker made notes, called James, confirmed everything Mrs. Anderson said, and closed the case within 2 hours. No concerns, no follow-up needed, no vulnerability except to family members who saw him as an obstacle to wealth. The investigator noted in her report, subject appears to have proactively protected himself from financial elder abuse. Recommend no further action. Day 7 evening. Blake's letter arrived via registered mail requiring Vanessa's signature, ensuring she couldn't later claim she'd never received it. The postal worker who delivered it would later provide an affidavit describing how Vanessa's hands shook so badly she could barely sign the electronic pad. The letter was 1 page, Blake's handwriting brief and brutal. Vanessa, by the time you read this, I'll have a new name and a new life. The men looking for me won't find me. Don't try either. I'm sorry about your father's money, but you were the one who said he'd never cut you off. We both gambled. We both lost. The prenup your dad made me sign means you get nothing from me anyway. Consider us even. Take care of yourself. B. No apology, no real goodbye. Just abandonment, dressed up as practicality. Blake had assessed the situation, calculated his odds, and decided Mexico offered better chances than Atlanta. He'd left his wife to face the consequences of debts they'd accumulated together because running was easier than accountability. Vanessa read the letter 3 times sitting on her front porch, the same porch where she'd opened the box 7 days earlier. Mrs. Anderson watched from her window, wanting to help, knowing there was nothing helpful to say. By Friday evening, 7 days after opening that box, Vanessa had lost access to $2.1 million in assets, discovered $800,000 in gambling debts she'd never known existed, learned her house had never been legally hers, watched her husband flee to Mexico, lost her part-time job, sold $40,000 worth of possessions for pennies on the dollar, been rejected by 4 attorneys, been investigated by Adult Protective Services, been publicly shamed on social media, and received an eviction notice with a 14-day deadline. She had $40,000 in cash hidden in her closet. She had a car she owned outright because I'd paid for it. She had her health, her education, and 2 children who didn't understand why Grandpa wasn't answering their calls. What she didn't have anymore was the illusion that someone would always save her. That safety net had burned completely, and the fall was longer and harder than she'd ever imagined possible. James sent his final report for the week with a simple note: subject has hit bottom. Next phase will determine if she bounces or breaks. Monitoring continues. I read it on my balcony at sunset, the Costa Rica sky painted orange and purple, howler monkeys calling from the jungle behind my villa, the ocean endless and indifferent in front of me. Patricia sat beside me reading the same report on her tablet. She set it down carefully, wiped her eyes discreetly, and spoke quietly. Did we do the right thing? I didn't answer immediately. We sat in silence as the sun sank lower, as the colors deepened, as the day ended, the same way all days end regardless of human drama. Ask me in 6 months, I finally said. If she's still broken, we failed. If she's rebuilding, we succeeded. Either way, we did the only thing left to do. Patricia nodded, picked up her wine glass, stared at the ocean. She's my daughter, and I love her. But I don't like who she became. I hope we get to like her again someday. Me too, I said. Me too. The sun disappeared below the horizon. 7 days, 1 box. Everything gone. But everything gone also meant everything possible. Rebuilding starts with ruins. We'd see if Vanessa had the strength to start building. Week 2 began with Vanessa sitting in the parking lot of Nordstrom Lenox Square at 5:45 a.m., staring at her reflection in the rearview mirror, trying to convince herself to go inside. She had applied for 17 jobs in 3 days. Retail, restaurant, administrative assistant, anything that didn't require references from a father who'd fled the country or a husband who'd fled to Mexico. Anything that would hire a 35-year-old woman whose resume showed a Spelman degree from 2012 and almost nothing substantive, since except part-time marketing consultant, a title that sounded impressive but meant very little. Nordstrom had called back. The same Nordstrom where she'd spent thousands of dollars over the years, where salespeople knew her by name, where she'd bought the designer dresses and shoes and handbags she'd just pawned for a fraction of their value. Now she was applying to work there. $16 an hour. Sales associate. Women's shoes. The irony was so thick she could taste it like copper in her mouth. She walked through the employee entrance at 6 a.m. sharp, wearing the only interview-appropriate outfit she hadn't pawned, a simple black dress from Target she'd bought yesterday with pawnshop cash. No designer labels, no status markers, just polyester and hope. The hiring manager, Patricia Chen, was efficient and kind in the way of people who'd seen every type of desperation. "Have you worked retail before?" "No, ma'am. But I'm a fast learner. I need this job. I'll work any hours you need." Patricia looked at her application at the Spelman degree at the gap in employment history. "You're overqualified on paper and underqualified in practice. Why should I hire you?" Vanessa could have lied, could have manufactured some story about finding herself or pursuing passion or any of the comfortable narratives that privileged people tell about their choices. Instead, she told the truth. "Because I just lost everything and I need to start over. Because I've never actually worked for anything in my life and I need to learn how. Because $16 an hour is more than I've ever earned myself and I want to know what that feels like." Patricia studied her for a long moment. "I'm going to hire you, but I'm going to work you hard. You'll start at the bottom. You'll do everything the other associates do. No special treatment because of your degree or your background or whatever you had before. You'll earn respect here the same way everyone else does. By showing up, working hard, and treating customers and coworkers with dignity." "Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am, I can do that." "Yes, ma'am, I can." "You start Monday, 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. weekdays. We'll see how you do." Vanessa started Monday. The training was 4 hours of computer modules about customer service and loss prevention and store policies. Then she was handed a name tag, Vanessa Sales Associate, and assigned to women's designer shoes on the second floor. The same department where she'd bought $700 Louboutins 3 months ago. The same floor where salespeople had fawned over her, brought her champagne, called her Miss Morrison with respectful smiles. Now she was the one bringing shoes from the stockroom, the one kneeling to help customers try on heels, the one smiling when women treated her like she was invisible or stupid or beneath their notice. The first week was humbling in ways she couldn't have anticipated. Her feet hurt from standing 8 hours. Her back ached from carrying shoe boxes up and down the stockroom ladder. Her face hurt from smiling at customers who snapped fingers at her, who demanded she find their size faster, who complained that the designer selection wasn't good enough while she bit her tongue and said, "I'll check in back for you." On Thursday of that first week, a woman came in wearing a dress Vanessa recognized because she owned the same one. Used to own, had pawned it 2 weeks ago. The woman saw Vanessa's name tag and her face changed recognition, and then pity, and then something worse, satisfaction. "Oh my God, Vanessa Morrison, from the Four Seasons wedding. You work here now?" "Yes, ma'am. Can I help you find something today?" The woman's smile was sharp. "I heard about your situation, your father, your husband. Social media is so informative these days. How the mighty have fallen right." Vanessa wanted to cry, wanted to scream, wanted to quit and run and hide. Instead, she smiled with every ounce of dignity she could manufacture. "The mighty never fell, ma'am. They were never standing on solid ground to begin with. Now what size shoe can I get for you?" The woman left without buying anything. Vanessa went to the bathroom and cried for 5 minutes. Then she washed her face, fixed her makeup, and went back to the floor. Week 3, Vanessa got her first paycheck. 6 40-hour weeks at $16 per hour, $960. After taxes, $743. She stared at the direct deposit notification on her phone for a full minute. $743. 2 weeks of work. The most money she'd ever earned herself in her entire life. It wasn't enough to cover the eviction. Wasn't enough to pay the threatening men. Wasn't enough to save anything. But it was hers. Earned. Real. Nobody had given it to her. Nobody could take it away. She cried in her car in the Nordstrom parking lot. Not from despair this time. From something else. Something that felt almost like pride. Week 4. The second job became necessary. $743 every 2 weeks wasn't enough. The eviction deadline was approaching. The men with the business card hadn't called again, but their silence felt more ominous than threats. Vanessa applied at 12 restaurants. 3 called back, 2 offered positions. She chose Waffle House on Ponce de Leon Avenue, the 24-hour location that served everyone from club kids at 3 a.m. to church families after Sunday service. The manager, Jerome, was a 40-year-old black man who'd worked at Waffle House for 18 years, starting as a dishwasher at 16 and working his way up to manager by 30. He looked at Vanessa's application with skepticism. "You ever waited tables before? No, sir. You know this is hard work. Night shift means drunk people, difficult people, people who don't tip. You'll be on your feet for 8 hours. You'll smell like grease and coffee when you leave. It's not glamorous." "I don't need glamorous. I need money. I'll work hard." Night shift is 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., Friday, Saturday, Sunday, $2.13 an hour plus tips. Tips are unpredictable. Some nights you'll make $200, some nights you'll make $40. You think you can handle that? "Yes, sir, I'll be here." She started that Friday. The training was 2 hours of shadowing another server, a 19-year-old named Crystal, who'd been working at Waffle House since she was 16 to help support her younger siblings. Crystal was patient but direct. "Keep your head down, work fast, don't take anything personally. Drunk people say stupid things. Poor people are the best tippers because they remember what it's like. Rich people are the worst because they think 16% is generous. Church crowd on Sunday mornings will run you ragged, but they tip decent if you smile enough." Vanessa's first shift was a baptism by fire. Friday night into Saturday morning. The 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. stretch that felt like it would never end. Her feet screamed, her back spasmed, her hands shook from carrying heavy plates and refilling coffee cups, and trying to keep track of 6 tables at once while orders barked at her from the kitchen and customers snapped for attention, and the register kept needing change. She made $87 in tips that first night. 8 hours of the hardest physical work she'd ever done. $87 in crumpled bills and scattered quarters. She counted it 3 times in her car as the sun rose over Atlanta, as early morning commuters started filling the roads as the city woke up to Saturday without knowing or caring about her exhaustion. $87. Plus the $213 hourly $17.04 from Waffle House. Total $104.04. For one night. One shift. Her money, her sweat, her aching feet and burning back and exhausted smile. It was the most beautiful $104 she'd ever seen. Week 5, the schedule became brutal. Nordstrom 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday through Friday. Home by 2:30. Sleep from 3 to 10:30. Wake up, shower, eat something quick. Arrive at Waffle House by 10:30 for the 11 p.m. start. Work until 7 a.m. Saturday and Sunday. Home by 7:30. Sleep until noon. Laundry and groceries and survival on Sunday afternoon. Repeat. No social life, no free time, no energy for anything except work and sleep and the basic maintenance of staying alive and employed. Vanessa moved out of her Druid Hills house on May 15th, the eviction deadline. She couldn't afford to fight it, couldn't afford a lawyer, couldn't afford anything except surrender and starting over. She found a studio apartment in East Atlanta for $750 a month, 400 square feet, 1 room plus bathroom. Window air conditioning unit that rattled like it had emphysema. Shared laundry in a basement that smelled like mildew and broken dreams. But it was hers. Her name on the lease. Her money for the deposit. Her first month's rent paid with earnings from Nordstrom and Waffle House combined. No father's check. No husband's credit card. Just her own labor converted into shelter. She moved herself. No movers. No help. Just her Mercedes loaded with what little she'd kept. Most of the furniture had been sold or abandoned. She took the essentials: bed, table, chair, lamp, her grandmother's quilt, and 1 photograph. The picture of her with her father at her Spelman graduation, both of them smiling, both of them proud, back when she still knew who she was. That photo went on the wall of her studio, the only decoration, the only reminder of who she used to be and who she needed to become. Mrs. Anderson drove by while Vanessa was unloading boxes, pulled over, rolled down her window. "Vanessa, honey, you doing okay?" Vanessa wanted to lie, wanted to maintain pride, wanted to pretend this wasn't rock bottom. Instead, she told the truth. "No, ma'am, but I'm working on it." Mrs. Anderson nodded. "Your daddy loves you. He's just done enabling you. There's a difference. You'll understand eventually. I hope so. I really hope so." Mrs. Anderson drove away. Vanessa carried another box upstairs, kept moving, kept working, kept surviving. Week 8 Memorial Day weekend. The holiday meant double shifts at both jobs. Nordstrom needed extra coverage for the sale. Waffle House needed extra staff for the holiday crowd. Vanessa volunteered for everything. Saturday, Nordstrom 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., 10-hour shift instead of 8. 15-minute break for lunch. Bathroom breaks when possible. Feet throbbing by noon. Back screaming by 3. But commission on holiday sales meant an extra $120. She smiled through the pain. Saturday night into Sunday morning, Waffle House 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Slammed from start to finish, every table full. Orders backing up, kitchen overwhelmed, Crystal and Vanessa and 2 other servers running constantly refilling coffee clearing plates trying to keep pace with demand. At 2 a.m., a bachelor party stumbled in 12 drunk men, loud and obnoxious and demanding. They stayed until 4:30, ordering rounds of waffles and hash browns, scattered, smothered, covered, chunked, making mess after mess, leaving garbage on the floor. Vanessa expected nothing. Drunk men rarely tipped well. She cleared their disaster of a table with resignation. Then she saw the cash. They'd left $340. A stack of 20s and 10s weighted down by a coffee mug, more than she'd ever made in tips in a single night. She stood there staring, unable to process. Crystal came over. "Girl, you crying over a good tip. Take it and say thank you to Jesus. I've never made this much in one night." $340. Crystal hugged her quickly. "That's because you worked your ass off and earned it. Now count it, claim it, and keep moving. We got more tables coming." Vanessa counted it 3 times. $340 from one table, plus another 90 from other tables throughout the night. $430 total in tips, plus 17 from hourly wages. $447 for 8 hours of work. She finished her shift at 7 a.m., drove to her studio apartment, parked in her assigned space, and sat in her car counting the money again as the Sunday morning sun rose over East Atlanta. $447. One night. Her work. Her smile. Her aching feet and burning back and exhausted gratitude. She cried in her car, counting and recounting the bills, finally understanding what money actually meant. Not status, not security from someone else. Just the direct exchange of labor for survival. Honest, simple, hers. That's when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then thought maybe it was about a job application, maybe more hours somewhere, maybe something important. She answered. "Is this Vanessa Morrison?" "Yes." "Who's calling?" "This is Ronald Baker. I'm a regular at the Waffle House on Ponce. I was there last night. Saw you working." Vanessa's stomach dropped. "Complaint. Fired. Something wrong. I'm sorry if I made a mistake. I'm still learning." "No mistake," Ronald said gently. "I'm calling because I recognized you. You're Lawrence Jackson's daughter, aren't you?" "Yes, sir. I thought so. Your father gave my son his first job 20 years ago. Dealership mechanic position when nobody else would hire a 19-year-old black kid with a GED. My son worked for Mr. Jackson for 15 years, bought a house, raised 3 kids, all because your father believed in him." Vanessa didn't know what to say. Didn't know her father had done that, had never asked about the people who worked for him, the lives he'd impacted, the difference he'd made beyond writing checks for her wants. "I just wanted to call and tell you," Ronald continued, "that your father is a good man. And I saw you working hard last night, real hard. And I wanted you to know that hard work is in your blood. Your father built everything from nothing. You can too. Don't give up." "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for calling. Take care, Miss Morrison. Your daddy would be proud of what I saw last night. I'm proud of you. Keep going." He hung up. Vanessa sat in her car holding $447 in one hand and her phone in the other, crying harder than she'd cried since the day she opened that box. Not tears of despair this time. Not tears of shame or anger or loss. Tears of something she'd never felt before. Something that felt like it might be pride. Real pride. Earned pride. The kind that came from work instead of status, from effort instead of inheritance, from becoming instead of just being. She climbed the stairs to her studio apartment. 400 square feet, $750 a month, one photo on the wall. Everything she owned fit in this one room. She had lost $2.1 million in assets. Lost her house, her husband, her status, her illusions. Lost everything that had defined her for 35 years. But she'd gained something too. Something small but real. $447. Earned. Hers. The first honest money she'd ever made. She taped a note above her bed written on Waffle House receipt paper. First honest money. Remember this feeling. Build from here. Rock bottom, she was learning, wasn't the end of falling. It was the foundation for climbing. You had to hit solid ground before you could push yourself back up. She'd hit it. Hard, painful, complete, but solid, real, true. Finally standing on ground she'd built herself instead of ground her father had purchased. For the first time in 8 weeks, Vanessa fell asleep, not from exhaustion, but from something that felt almost like peace. Small, fragile, but real, and entirely hers. I landed at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport on August 15th at 10:30 a.m., exactly 5 months after I'd left. Same terminal, same gate, different man entirely. The rental car was a modest Camry, not the luxury sedan that Lawrence Jackson would have demanded 5 months ago. I drove toward the city I'd built my empire in, seeing it with new eyes, grateful eyes. Eyes that had learned the difference between success and happiness in a Costa Rica beach town where nobody cared about my net worth. I didn't go to my house. Mrs. Anderson had been maintaining it, sending me photos every week of the lawn, the flowers, the porch where Vanessa had opened that box and her world had exploded. The house was fine. Empty, but fine. It could wait. I didn't go to my dealerships. Jake had been sending detailed reports. Sales were up. Employee satisfaction was up. Turns out businesses run better when the founder stops micromanaging and starts trusting. The empire I'd built didn't need me anymore. It had grown beyond me. That was good. That was healthy. That was what I'd built it for, even if I hadn't known it at the time. I checked into a Hampton Inn off Peachtree, a modest hotel that cost $89 a night instead of the $300 I used to spend at the Four Seasons. The room was clean, functional enough. I was learning that enough was actually plenty. Patricia had flown back 2 weeks earlier, settling into her condo next to my villa, establishing the parallel life we'd both created. She'd called yesterday with an update. She's still working both jobs. Nordstrom days, Waffle House weekends. Living in that studio. Lost 22 pounds, not from trying, just from working. Hair is natural now, no more expensive weave. Wears drugstore makeup, Target clothes. Looks exhausted but different. Cleaner somehow, like she's been stripped down to who she actually is instead of who she was pretending to be. Does she ask about me every time I see her? Which isn't often. I keep my distance. But yes, she asks. Not demanding, just asking. Like she finally understands she doesn't get to demand anymore. I'm going to see her today. Patricia was quiet for a moment. You sure you're ready? No. But I'm going anyway. At 4 p.m., I walked into Nordstrom Lenox Square through the main entrance, just another customer on a Thursday afternoon. The store had the quiet hum of midweek shopping serious buyers instead of weekend browsers. I found women's designer shoes on the second floor and positioned myself across the showroom, pretending to look at men's accessories, actually watching my daughter work. She looked different. Smaller somehow, though. Patricia said she'd lost weight. More present. When she spoke to customers, she listened instead of waiting for her turn to talk. When she knelt to help an elderly woman try on shoes, she did it with patience and care instead of the performative service I'd seen from her before. Her hair was different. Natural curls instead of the straightened style she'd worn for years, the style that cost $200 every 2 weeks to maintain. No more. Just her own hair pulled back in a simple bun, professional but authentic. She wore minimal makeup. Drugstore brands, I'd guess, instead of the Sephora hauls she used to post about. Her name tag said Vanessa Sales Associate. No Morrison. No hyphenated married name. Just Vanessa. Just herself. I watched her help 4 customers over 30 minutes. Patient with all of them. Kind to the demanding ones. Genuinely helpful to the confused ones. This wasn't performance. This was work. Real work. The kind that requires empathy and patience and the death of ego. At 4:35, I approached her section. She was restocking shoes on a display, her back to me, humming something softly. A hymn, maybe. Something I recognized from my mother's church. "Excuse me," I said quietly. "I'm looking for comfortable walking shoes. Something for an older gentleman who does a lot of walking these days." She turned customer service smile in place, ready to help. Then she saw me. The smile froze. The shoebox in her hands dropped. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Daddy," she finally whispered. "Hello, baby girl." We stood there 5 feet apart, 5 months apart, lifetimes apart. Customers moved around us. Store music played. Life continued while ours stood completely still. Then she laughed. Not hysterical, Not bitter, just laughed, shaking her head, tears starting to fall. You're shopping at Nordstrom. You haven't bought your own clothes in 20 years. Things change. Yes, she said softly. They do. She couldn't leave her shift. Store policy, but she could help a customer. So I became a customer. We talked carefully, quietly, while she showed me walking shoes I didn't need. You look different, I observed. I am different. Poverty is an effective teacher. She paused. Not poverty. Reality. I was never poor. Just finally not rich. There's wisdom in that distinction. She selected a pair of New Balance shoes, practical and comfortable. These would work well. Good support. Durable. Not flashy, but they last. Like the important things in life. She looked at me directly for the first time. Yes, exactly like that. I get off at 6. Then I have to be at Waffle House by 11. Can we have dinner in between? I can't afford to eat out, but I could make something at my place. It's not much. Just a studio. But it's mine. I'd be honored. She rang up the shoes at the register, applied her employee discount without asking. Small gesture. Pride in work. Offering what she could. At 6:30, I stood outside her studio apartment in East Atlanta, holding the shoes I'd bought just to have an excuse to talk to her. The building was old but maintained. Not dangerous, just working class. The neighborhood where people lived paycheck to paycheck but kept their dignity intact. She opened the door wearing jeans and a t-shirt, both from Target, both worn from washing. Her apartment was exactly as Patricia had described. 400 square feet, 1 room, 1 bathroom, everything visible at once. But it was immaculate, clean, organized. 1 photo on the wall said her Spelman graduation. 1 bookshelf, financial literacy books from the library. 1 small table, 2 chairs mismatched. It's not much, she started. It's yours, I interrupted. That makes it everything. She had groceries laid out on the tiny counter. Pasta, jar sauce, bagged salad, garlic bread, simple food, affordable food. Food she'd bought with money she'd earned. I don't cook fancy anymore. Can't afford it. But this is good. This is what I know how to make now. Can I help? We cooked together in her tiny kitchen, bumping into each other in the small space, falling into a rhythm we hadn't had in years. She boiled water. I heated sauce. She assembled salad. I buttered bread. Simple tasks. Simple food. Simply being together without money, mediating every interaction. We ate at her small table, plastic plates because she couldn't afford real dishes, yet mismatched forks from the thrift store. The pasta was slightly overcooked. The sauce was from a jar. The bread was store brand. It was the best meal I'd had in months. I hated you, she said, suddenly setting down her fork. Really hated you. Wanted you dead. Wanted you to suffer. Wanted everything bad to happen to you. I know. I mean, really hated you. The kind of hate that keeps you awake at night planning revenge that will never happen. I know, baby girl. I know. How could you leave me with nothing? Her voice broke. How could you just disappear and leave me to drown? How could I leave you with everything? I set down my fork, met her eyes. It was killing you. Killing both of us. You were 35 years old and you'd never worked for anything. Never earned anything. Never understood the value of $1 because dollars just appeared whenever you wanted them. I thought you didn't love me anymore. I loved you enough to let you fall. That's a different kind of love. Harder. More painful. But more real. She cried quietly, not hiding it, not performing it. Just crying. Real tears, real grief, real understanding finally breaking through years of entitlement and delusion. Blake is gone. She wiped her eyes with a paper napkin. Living in Mexico somewhere. I don't care. He was using me to use you. I was letting him because it was easier than admitting I was using you too. What are you doing now besides working? Learning. She gestured to the library books. Financial literacy, budgeting, saving, all the things I should have learned 20 years ago. All the things I was too privileged to bother learning. How much do you make now? $16 an hour at Nordstrom. $213 plus tips at Waffle House. Average maybe $35,000 a year if I work every hour they'll give me. It's the most money I've ever actually earned. You're proud of that? It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. So proud. Stupidly, embarrassingly proud. I made $340 in tips one night and I cried in my car because it was mine. I earned it. Nobody gave it to me. That's not stupid. That's growth. We finished eating in comfortable silence. She started to clear the plates, but I stopped her. I need to give you something. I pulled an envelope from my jacket. This isn't rescue. This is investment. She took it carefully, suspiciously, like it might explode. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a business contract. What is this job offer? Business proposal. You work for me. Not at the dealerships. New project. Teaching financial literacy to young adults in Atlanta. People who need to learn what you're learning. People who might listen to someone who lost everything and rebuilt. I'm not qualified. You're uniquely qualified. You've been both sides. Rich without understanding. Working with awakening. You know the cost of not knowing. That makes you the perfect teacher. This is charity. This is business. Read the contract. Fair salary. $52,000 a year. No special treatment. Performance-based raises. You fail, you're fired, daughter or not. She read the contract carefully. All 6 pages. Every clause. Every condition. Taking her time. Understanding before signing. Learning. This isn't charity, she repeated quietly. This is the chance you've earned, not the one you demanded. The one you built through 5 months of waking up at 5 a.m. and working until exhaustion and never giving up even when you hated me. What if I fail? Then you'll have failed at something you tried. That's more than you'd done in 35 years of succeeding at nothing. She looked at the contract, at the check, at me, at her tiny apartment, at the life she'd built from ruins. Can I think about it? Read it 3 times. That's another lesson. Never sign anything you haven't read carefully 3 times. She smiled. Learning from experience. Expensive experience. But yes. At 10:15, she had to leave for Waffle House. She changed into her work clothes, simple black pants, and the company shirt, her name tag that said Vanessa Server. She hugged me at her door. Not the calculated embraces from before, not the performance hugs designed to manipulate. Just a hug. Daughter to father, person to person, grateful to grateful. Thank you for coming back, she whispered. Thank you for still being here. I'll call you tomorrow. After I read this 3 times, I'll be waiting. She walked to her car, the Mercedes I'd bought her 3 years ago, the only material thing from her old life that still remained. She drove away toward Waffle House, toward another 8-hour shift, toward the life she was building hour by hour, dollar by dollar, choice by choice. I stood outside her studio apartment building, watching her taillights disappear, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not pride in what I'd given her, pride in what she'd built herself, pride in the daughter who'd emerged from the ruins of the daughter I'd created, pride in her strength, her resilience, her willingness to start over at rock bottom and climb back up. The hug at her door had been different. No agenda, no calculation, no manipulation, just connection, pure, simple, real. For the first time in 8 years, I'd hugged my daughter and felt her hug back without wondering what it would cost me. That was worth every dollar I'd spent, every tear I'd shed, every painful choice I'd made to get here. I drove back to my Hampton Inn through Atlanta traffic, past my dealerships, past my empty house, past the life I'd left behind. Tomorrow, Vanessa would call with her decision. Tonight, I had my daughter back. Not the one I'd created with my checkbook, the one she'd created with her own 2 hands. That daughter was worth keeping. 1 month later, Vanessa called on a Tuesday morning while I was having coffee on my Costa Rica balcony watching howler monkeys play in the trees behind my villa. I read the contract 3 times, like you said. Then I had a lawyer read it. Then I read it 3 more times. It's fair. More than fair. I accept. You sure you can keep both jobs if you want a backup plan? I am keeping Waffle House. Just weekends, for 6 months. Until I'm sure this is real and I can actually do it. Smart. When can you start next Monday? I gave Nordstrom 2 weeks' notice. They're sorry to see me go. Patricia said they offered me assistant manager if I'd stay. What did you tell them? That I'm grateful for the opportunity, but I'm ready to teach instead of sell. That I learned more in 5 months on that sales floor than I learned in 4 years at Spelman. But it's time to pass those lessons on. Your mother would be proud of that answer. She already told me. We had lunch last week. First time in months we talked without crying or fighting or both. Patricia hadn't mentioned that. Good. That was between them. Some healing needed to happen without me witnessing it. The first Financial Foundations workshop happened 3 weeks later at a community center in Sweet Auburn, the historic black neighborhood where my mother had worked as a maid 70 years ago. where I'd built my first dealership 50 years ago, where Atlanta's black middle class had been born through struggle and determination and refusing to accept what society said was our limit. Vanessa had promoted it through social media, through church networks, through word of mouth. She'd expected maybe 5 people. 15 showed up. I sat in the back row unannounced watching my daughter teach for the first time. She started by telling her story. Not the sanitized version, not the version that made her look good, the real version, ugly, honest, complete. My name is Vanessa. I'm 35 years old. Until 6 months ago, I'd never worked a real job in my life. I had a degree from Spelman. I had a house in Druid Hills. I had a closet full of designer clothes. I had everything except the one thing that mattered: self-respect. She showed them the spreadsheet. $1.47 million, 8 years. All gifts from her father, all spent, all wasted. I thought money was love. I thought my father giving me everything meant he loved me. I was wrong. Money was enabling. Money was him trying to protect me from struggle. But struggle is where growth happens. Comfort is where growth dies. She told them about losing everything: the house, the husband, the illusions. She told them about Nordstrom and Waffle House, about crying over a $340 tip, about learning that $16 an hour earned was worth more than $16,000 given. The audience was riveted. 12 women, 3 men, ages from 19 to 60, all struggling in different ways, all needing to hear that someone who'd had everything and lost everything had survived and was standing in front of them teaching. At the end, a 19-year-old girl named Zara raised her hand. "Miss Vanessa, how did you stop being angry at your father?" Vanessa took a long breath. "I haven't completely. Some days I'm still angry. But I'm learning that anger and gratitude can exist together. I'm angry that he let me become helpless. But I'm grateful that he loved me enough to stop enabling me before I destroyed myself completely." After the workshop, Zara approached Vanessa privately. "I saw you at that party, the one where the video happened. I was working catering. I saw everything." Vanessa froze. "What did you see?" "I saw your family treat you like you didn't matter. I saw them laugh when you were struggling. I saw you realize they were counting your money before you were dead. And I saw you survive it. That's why I came today. Because if you could survive that, maybe I can survive my stuff too." Vanessa hugged her, crying. "Thank you for having the courage to tell me that." I left before Vanessa saw me. This was her moment, her triumph, her beginning. 6 months later, the program had expanded to 4 HBCUs: Clark Atlanta University, Spelman College, Morehouse College, and Georgia State University. Vanessa was speaking to packed auditoriums, 200 students at a time, telling her story with the confidence of someone who'd earned the right to tell it. I attended one at Spelman, sitting in the back again, watching my daughter command a stage in the same auditorium where I'd watched her graduate 13 years ago. A student raised her hand during Q&A. "You're Lawrence Jackson's daughter, right? Like the Lawrence Jackson from Jackson Automotive." Vanessa didn't flinch. "I am. And for 35 years that was my identity. His daughter, his responsibility, his burden. It took losing everything for me to understand that being his daughter was a privilege I'd turned into an entitlement. Now I'm building my own identity. I'm Vanessa. I teach financial literacy. I work at Waffle House on weekends because it keeps me grounded. I'm his daughter, but that's not all I am anymore." The auditorium erupted in applause. After her speech, a professor approached her. "We'd like to offer you an adjunct position. Teach 1 class per semester. Personal finance for the real world. Interested?" Vanessa looked at me in the back row. I nodded. She smiled, very interested. "But I keep Waffle House. It reminds me where I came from, where I rebuilt from." 1 year after opening that box, Atlanta Magazine ran a cover story, "Heiress to Humility: How Vanessa Jackson Lost Everything and Found Herself." The photo showed her in her Waffle House uniform, standing in front of a chalkboard covered with financial literacy terms, smiling genuinely. Not the performance smile from before. A real smile. Earned. True. The article was honest and brutal. It detailed her fall, her failures, her father's escape, her husband's abandonment. But it also detailed her rise. The 2 jobs, the studio apartment, the workshops, the students whose lives she was changing by being honest about how she'd nearly destroyed her own. The comments section was split. Half thought she was brave. Half thought she was getting publicity for being a failure. Vanessa read all of them and felt nothing but gratitude that people cared enough to have opinions. 15 months after I left, Vanessa received a letter from Bank of America. The bond I'd placed in storage for her had matured. $50,000, available for withdrawal, no restrictions, no conditions, just a test. She called me from her studio apartment. The bond matured. I know. What are you going to do with it? I've been thinking about that for 3 weeks. I could pay off my car, I could get a bigger apartment, I could quit Waffle House and focus on teaching. All reasonable choices. But I'm not going to do any of those things. I'm going to use it as a down payment on a small townhouse in Decatur. 2 bedrooms, one for me, one for Marcus and Aisha when they visit. Nothing fancy, just stable. Mine. And I'm going to save my own money for the rest. I've got $18,000 saved from tips and salary over the past year. That plus the bond will be enough. You saved $18,000 on $35,000 a year income while paying rent and bills. I learned how to budget. Turns out, those library books were helpful. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me too. That's new. That feeling. I like it. The townhouse in Decatur was modest but perfect. Built in 1985. Needed some work. Nothing structural. Just cosmetic. Paint. New fixtures. Deep cleaning. Vanessa did most of it herself, watching YouTube tutorials, learning how to use tools she'd never touched in her life. Patricia and I helped her move in on a Saturday in October. Mrs. Anderson came too, bringing a homemade sweet potato pie. We painted walls together, hung curtains, assembled furniture from IKEA, laughed at our failures, celebrated our small successes. "This is mine," Vanessa kept saying, running her hands along the kitchen counter, looking out the back window at her small yard. "I earned this, every inch of it. Nobody gave it to me." That night, after everyone left, Vanessa sat in her empty living room on the floor eating sweet potato pie, looking at the space she'd created through 16 months of work and sacrifice and refusal to give up. She took a photo and posted it to Instagram. First time in a year. Simple caption, built from ruins. Grateful beyond words. 2,000 likes. 300 comments. Most supportive. Some skeptical. Some still angry about her privilege. She read them all and felt grateful that she'd survived long enough to have people care about her journey. Blake, according to James's investigator, was still in Juarez, still working at a car rental agency, still hiding from debts that would follow him forever. Vanessa had filed for divorce 14 months ago. Blake never responded. The judge granted it anyway. Abandonment and fraud. Clean break. No assets to divide because there were no assets to divide. Vanessa kept her maiden name. Jackson. The name her father had built. The name she was learning to honor through action instead of assumption. Thanksgiving 2025 arrived cold and clear. Vanessa had called 6 weeks earlier with an invitation. "I'm hosting Thanksgiving at my townhouse. You, Mama, Marcus, and Aisha. Nobody else. Just family. Real family. Not the family that uses each other. The family that loves each other. Can you come? I wouldn't miss it." Patricia flew in from Charleston. I drove from the Hampton Inn, where I'd been staying during increasingly frequent Atlanta visits. Marcus and Aisha arrived with David, who'd separated from Blake's sister Ashley 3 months after the box incident, finally understanding what he'd become by staying silent while his daughter suffered. David and I were still rebuilding, still careful, still learning to talk without resentment poisoning every word, but we were trying. That was new. That mattered. Vanessa's townhouse smelled like home when we arrived at 2 in the afternoon. Sweet potato pie baking, collard greens simmering, cornbread cooling on the counter. Soul food, traditional food, food that connected us to ancestors who'd survived worse than family drama and financial ruin. The dining table was small, barely big enough for 6 people, nothing like the expansive table in her old Druid Hills house. But this table was hers, bought with her money, earned through her labor. Dinner was simple but abundant. Turkey from Kroger, not Whole Foods. Stuffing from a box, not homemade. Green bean casserole from a recipe she'd found online. Nothing fancy, everything perfect. We sat squeezed together, knees touching passing dishes around the small table, laughing when we spilled, helping each other, being family in a way we'd never managed when we had more space and more money and more of everything except what actually mattered. Before we ate, Vanessa raised her glass of sparkling cider. To family, the kind that doesn't give up on you even when you give up on yourself. Patricia raised hers next. To lessons learned the hard way, and to the strength to learn them. I raised mine last, to starting over, at any age, in any circumstance. It's never too late to become who you were meant to be. Marcus, now 11, looked at me with wide eyes. Grandpa, is it true you used to sleep in a car lot when you started your business? The table went quiet. Vanessa watched me carefully, curious how I'd tell this story to her children. Sure did, buddy. 1975. Banks wouldn't give black men business loans back then. So I slept in that first lot for 6 months with nothing but a dream, a guard dog named Duke, and your great-grandmother's prayers. Were you scared, terrified, but more scared of giving up, more scared of letting fear win, more scared of not trying than of failing? Aisha, 9, now turned to Vanessa. Mommy, why do you still work at Waffle House? You have a real job now. Vanessa smiled, setting down her fork, choosing her words carefully. Because everything worth having is worth working for. Because Waffle House reminds me that money isn't what makes you valuable. Your work makes you valuable. Your effort. Your character. Those $3 tips from tired nurses at 3 in the morning taught me more about life than $1,000 shopping trips ever did. But don't you want to be rich again? Marcus asked innocently. I am rich, baby. Vanessa gestured around her modest townhouse. I have a home I earned, a job I love, a family that loves me back. That's richer than I've ever been. David spoke for the first time, his voice quiet. Vanessa, I'm sorry for everything, for not protecting you from Blake, for not teaching you what Dad tried to teach me, for failing you as a father. Vanessa reached across the table, took his hand. You didn't fail me, Daddy. You loved me the best way you knew how. We all did. We just had to learn better ways. After dinner, Marcus and Aisha colored at Vanessa's coffee table while the adults cleaned up in her small kitchen. Patricia washed. Vanessa dried. I put away. David wrapped leftovers. Domestic. Simple. Real. I watched my family work together. Watched my daughter teach her children about gratitude and effort. Watched my ex-wife hum old hymns while washing dishes. Watched my son try to rebuild what he'd helped break. This was wealth. Not the houses or cars or bank accounts. This. Connection. Presence. People showing up for each other without transaction, without agenda, without keeping score. We gathered in the living room after cleanup. Vanessa had no television, just conversation and presence and being together. Marcus showed me his school project. Aisha read from a book about Harriet Tubman. Patricia told stories about my mother, about growing up in rural Georgia, about the grandmother these children had never met, but whose strength lived in their blood. At 7 o'clock, Vanessa had to leave for Waffle House. She'd kept her weekend shift even though her teaching salary was enough now. Kept it because it grounded her. Kept it because the work mattered. Kept it because she'd promised herself 6 months and it had become 18 months and she wasn't ready to let go. She changed into her work uniform, in her bedroom emerged wearing the simple black pants and company shirt, her name tag pinned carefully, her hair pulled back. She hugged everyone goodbye, saved me for last. Daddy, she whispered, holding on longer than necessary. Thank you. For everything. For the hard things. For the painful things. For loving me enough to let me fall and trusting me enough to believe I'd learn to fly. Thank you, baby girl, for coming back. For doing the work, for becoming who you were always meant to be under all that privilege and protection. She pulled back, looked at me directly. I need to tell you something. Something I should have said months ago. What's that? Thank you for leaving. Thank you for disappearing. Thank you for that box. Thank you for the worst day of my life that became the first day of my real life. Thank you for loving me enough to hurt me. That's the truest love I've ever known. I couldn't speak, just nodded, just held her. Just felt grateful beyond words that my daughter had survived, had learned, had become. She drove away to Waffle House. We cleaned up her townhouse, washing dishes and folding blankets and turning off lights. Marcus and Aisha fell asleep on her couch, exhausted from food and family and the kind of Thanksgiving that creates memories instead of just consuming them. Patricia and I stood in Vanessa's small kitchen looking around at what our daughter had built. Did we do the right thing? Patricia asked again the same question she'd asked 15 months ago. This time I had an answer. Yes. It nearly killed us both, nearly destroyed her. But yes, we did the only thing that could save her. We let her save herself. Patricia nodded, wiped her eyes, smiled through tears. I'm proud of her. Finally, after all these years, I'm actually proud. Me too. Not proud of what we gave her. Proud of what she built after we stopped giving. David emerged from the living room where he'd been watching his sleeping children. Dad, can we talk? Really talk. Not the careful conversations we've been having. Real talk. We sat at Vanessa's small table. Patricia excused herself to the porch, giving us space. I failed everyone, David said. Failed Vanessa by not standing up to Blake. Failed you by not having your back. Failed my kids by showing them it was okay to use family. I've been in therapy for 6 months trying to understand how I became that person. You became that person because it was easier than being uncomfortable. Because watching Vanessa suffer would have required you to act. Acting would have meant confronting your wife. Confronting your wife would have meant risking your comfort. So you chose comfort over courage. I'm choosing different now, David's voice broke. Ashley and I are divorced. I'm rebuilding my relationship with my kids. I'm working on being the son you deserved and the father Vanessa needed. I know it's late. I know I can't undo the damage. But I'm trying. Trying is enough. Trying is where everything starts. Can you forgive me? I already have. Now you need to forgive yourself. That's harder. But that's where real change happens. We hugged. Awkward. Emotional. Real. Father and son. Both flawed. Both trying. Both worthy of second chances. At 10:30, we loaded sleeping children into David's car. Hugged goodbye. Promised to do this again at Christmas. Meant it. Patricia and I stood in Vanessa's driveway looking at her modest townhouse, her earned home, her real beginning. You staying in Atlanta? Patricia asked. For a while. Costa Rica is home now. But Atlanta is where my daughter is, where my grandchildren are, where my family is rebuilding. I'll split time. 6 months there, 6 months here. Best of both worlds. I'll do the same. Charleston is boring anyway. Rather watch Vanessa teach than watch retirees play shuffleboard. We laughed, drove our separate directions, both grateful, both changed, both understanding that the worst thing we'd ever done to our daughter was also the best thing, the most painful gift, the cruelest kindness, the love that looked like abandonment but was actually salvation. I drove back to my Hampton Inn through Atlanta traffic, past my dealerships where Jake was building something better than I'd ever built, past my empty house where Mrs. Anderson maintained memories I wasn't ready to reclaim, past the city that had raised me and broken me and taught me and freed me. My phone buzzed at 11:15. Text from Vanessa. Made it to Waffle House. Thanksgiving rush is crazy, but I'm grateful for the chaos, for the work, for the life I'm building one shift at a time. Love you, Daddy. For real this time. Not the transactional love, the real kind. The kind that survives hard truths and harder lessons. Thank you for teaching me what love actually means. I pulled over to respond properly. Love you too, baby girl. Proud of you. Not for what you lost, for what you built from the ruins, for who you became when nobody was there to save you except yourself. That's the daughter I always knew was there. Glad she finally emerged. I sat in my car in a random parking lot crying like I hadn't cried in months, not from sadness, from relief, from gratitude, from the overwhelming knowledge that my daughter had survived, had learned, had become, had finally grown into the woman she was always capable of being underneath the layers of privilege and protection and enabling I'd wrapped around her like chains. The hardest thing I ever did wasn't building a business in racist Atlanta. It was walking away from my daughter when she needed me most. But she didn't need me. She needed consequences. She needed reality. She needed to discover that she was strong enough to survive without my checkbook cushioning every fall. And she had. God, she had. I drove to my hotel, slept better than I'd slept in years, woke up grateful, for loss that taught gain, for cruelty that taught kindness, for abandonment that taught presence, for the worst decision I'd ever made that turned out to be the best decision I'd never known I needed to make. My daughter was free, and in freeing her, I'd freed us both. This story isn't about money. It never was. It's about respect, dignity, and the dangerous line between love and enabling that destroys families from the inside out. Lawrence Jackson built a fortune over 46 years, rising from sleeping in a car lot with a guard dog to owning 3 dealerships across Atlanta. He did it in a city and era that didn't want black men to succeed, that made him prove his worth 1,000 times over, that taught him the value of every dollar through struggle and sacrifice. Then he gave it all to his daughter. Not gradually, not with conditions, not with lessons attached, just gave it. $1,470,000 over 8 years. Wedding, house, cars, failed businesses, credit cards, vacations. Everything she wanted whenever she wanted it because he loved her and didn't want her to struggle like he had. He thought he was loving her. He was actually crippling her. That's the first lesson. Generational wealth without generational wisdom is just delayed poverty. Money doesn't teach character. Struggle teaches character. Work teaches character. Consequences teach character. Lawrence gave Vanessa everything except the one thing she actually needed: the opportunity to fail, learn, and build herself. He wanted to spare her the pain of his journey. Instead, he robbed her of the strength his journey had given him. He gave her the destination without the map, the trophy without the competition, the degree without the education. At 35 years old, Vanessa had never worked for anything, had never earned anything, had never understood that money represents time and effort and sacrifice, not just numbers in an account that magically replenished whenever she needed more. That's the second lesson. Enabling is not love. It's fear dressed up as generosity. Lawrence enabled Vanessa because he was afraid she'd struggle, afraid she'd suffer, afraid she'd blame him for not helping, afraid of being a bad father if he said no. But love isn't always comfortable. Sometimes love is letting someone fall, letting them fail, letting them face consequences without rushing in with a checkbook to soften the landing. That's terrifying. That requires faith that they'll survive, learn, and grow stronger. Lawrence finally found that faith. It nearly destroyed him, but it saved his daughter. The third lesson is about community and memory. The black community in Atlanta remembered Lawrence Jackson, remembered how he gave jobs when others wouldn't, remembered how he showed up for fundraisers and scholarships and community events, remembered how he built something from nothing and helped others do the same. They also saw what Vanessa became, saw her marry into white privilege and forget her roots, saw her spend without gratitude, saw her treat her father like an ATM instead of a man who'd sacrificed everything so she could have choices he never had. Mrs. Anderson and the church ladies and Ronald Baker at Waffle House didn't celebrate Vanessa's fall, but they recognized it as necessary. Recognized that sometimes the community has to step back and let someone hit bottom before they can climb back up. Recognized that protecting someone from consequences isn't protection at all. Community remembers, not just success, but character. Not just wealth, but integrity. Vanessa lost her status overnight, but she could rebuild her character through honest work, through showing up, through proving she'd learned. The community watched, waited, and when she proved herself, they welcomed her back. The fourth lesson is about race and class intersecting in painful ways. Blake Morrison represented everything dangerous about marrying outside your community without maintaining your values. Not because he was white, because he was entitled, because he saw Lawrence's success as something to exploit rather than respect, because he convinced Vanessa that her father's money was her birthright rather than his achievement. Blake's family had old money that was gone. Lawrence had new money that was earned. Blake wanted the appearance of wealth without the work. Lawrence had built wealth through work and wanted to spare his daughter that work. They were opposites who created the same disaster: a woman who understood neither earning nor appreciating, only spending and expecting. When everything fell apart, Blake ran to Mexico. Lawrence built a new life in Costa Rica. Both left. But Lawrence left to teach. Blake left to hide. Intention matters. Consequences matter. Character matters. The fifth lesson is that it's never too late. Lawrence was 76 when he finally said no. 76 when he boarded that plane. 76 when he chose himself over enabling. 76 when he started over. Vanessa was 35 when she lost everything. 35 when she got her first real job. 35 when she learned what money actually means. 35 when she started building a life instead of just spending one. Age is an excuse, not a barrier. Change is always possible. Growth is always available. but only if you're willing to endure the pain of transformation. Only if you're willing to admit you were wrong and do the hard work of becoming right. Lawrence and Vanessa both started over. Both rebuilt. Both discovered that the second version of yourself, the one built after everything falls apart, is often stronger and truer than the first version, the one built on comfort and assumption and unearned privilege. The final lesson is the simplest and hardest. The fortune you leave behind matters less than the person you leave behind. Lawrence could have left Vanessa millions, could have died knowing she'd never work, never struggle, never grow. She'd have been financially comfortable and spiritually bankrupt, rich and empty, secure and lost. Instead, he left her nothing except the opportunity to build everything herself. Left her broke, abandoned, and forced to discover who she actually was underneath the designer clothes and daddy's credit card. That gift, painful as it was, saved her life. Not her physical life, her real life, the one where she matters because of what she does, not what she has, where she's valuable because of her character, not her bank account, where she earns respect through action instead of assuming it through inheritance. If you're reading this and you're a parent, ask yourself, am I building a person or maintaining a dependent? Am I teaching strength or subsidizing weakness? Am I loving my child or enabling their dysfunction? If you're reading this and you're an adult child living on your parents' money, ask yourself, am I grateful or entitled? Am I building something or just spending something someone else built? What happens when they're gone and the money stops? Money is temporary. Character is permanent. Respect is earned. Dignity is chosen. Growth requires pain. Change requires courage. Love sometimes requires letting go completely so someone can finally stand on their own. Lawrence Jackson left his daughter broke, but he left her strong. Left her capable, left her proud of herself for the first time in 35 years. That's a legacy worth more than any fortune. That's love that lasts beyond bank accounts. That's the lesson Vanessa learned at rock bottom and carried with her as she climbed back up. Not what you give someone, but what you teach them to give themselves. Not the fortune you leave, but the person you leave. Not the comfort you provide, but the strength you require them to develop. That's the price of respect, and it's worth paying. Always. If this story moved, you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to start over. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had to make a hard choice to help someone you love? What did rock bottom teach you? Thank you for listening. Remember, the fortune you leave matters less than the person you leave behind.